Hey guys, welcome back to the Glory Living channel. My name's Hannah, and today we are going to be doing something fun. We are going to be making homemade Italian meatballs, and we are going to share our family recipe with you. Let's go check it out. Okay guys, so here's the thing about meatballs. There's so many opinions out there on how to make the best perfect Italian meatball, and so many different recipes out there floating on the internet. I want to share with you a really easy, really delicious family meatball recipe that I hope you can adopt in your house and get a really good homemade meatball. I've talked to others who have a really hard time making a homemade meatball, and they've either resorted to store-bought, which I tried once, and honestly the ones I got were so bad it made me really determined to figure out a homemade recipe. And so I have been working on this for a long time. It's been a long time coming, and I think I finally figured out a really good balance of flavor, great texture for a good meatball that's good plain, in sauce, and any way you want to eat it. So if you're having a hard time making great meatballs, or if you are just looking to spice things up, I want to share with you our recipe that we've gotten down for our house and one that our family has really enjoyed. Okay, let's go make them. One of the things that can be challenging about making meatballs is getting a really good texture and also not totally losing the flavor. See, even though we probably use ground beef a ton with tacos and burgers and things like that, you know, when we're making tacos, it's easy. We know it's flavor and it's all crumbled up. And burgers are more simplified. Just like all you need is salt and you're good to go. But when you do a meatball, it's this combination of where you want flavor, not just on the outside, but on the inside of it, and just bursting with beautiful flavor. And you don't want it to be too tough, and you don't want it to be either soggy and soppy either. So it's all about the balance. And one of the keys to that balance is an ingredient that I'm going to share with you as we go through what you're going to need to make these awesome meatballs. First, starting with the meat. I actually have two types of meat that I'm going to put in my meatballs. I, for the longest time, tried doing it strictly with just ground beef, but I have totally abandoned that ship, and I am now doing it in a way that I've heard recommended, and I loved it. It totally changed the meatball game for me. I am doing also an Italian sausage mixed with the ground beef. So first, you start with 1 pound of ground beef and 1/2 pound of an Italian sausage. We do mild, we don't want it too hot, and that really changes the flavor and the texture, having that mix of the beef and the pork. Going once again on the flavor, of course you want salt, pepper, move on to some garlic powder, oregano, and basil. These are seasonings that I think anybody who's been cooking for even any reasonable amount of time is going to have in their kitchen, which I think makes this really easy, nothing crazy, very simple, very common seasonings. Returning back to the texture concept here, there are two ingredients that I'm going to recommend for texture, for holding this together and giving it a good texture. Those are going to be eggs and breadcrumbs. And so I'm going to tell you all the amounts of that as well. For these breadcrumbs, you can do, this is a panko breadcrumb, but any breadcrumbs that you have. You can make your own breadcrumbs. You can have, if you have an Italian seasoning breadcrumb, panko breadcrumb, whatever you have, getting breadcrumbs in is going to help the texture of your meatball. So those are our ingredients. We're going to start mixing them together. I'm going to tell you some amounts here and show you what I do to get a delicious meatball. So obviously, before we get into our ingredients, one thing that's important is preheating the oven. We preheated our oven to 375 degrees, and that will make a perfectly textured meatball. Okay, so something that I think is also important to note is that you don't want to over mix your ground beef and your pork and your meats together. That can change and toughen the texture of your meatball. So the less amount of time that you're using your hands mixing this all in, the better. So I'm going to mix all of my seasonings in first together to get them mixed in and incorporated together well. I'm going to beat my eggs in here as well, and then I'm going to put it all in and mix it in with the meat. That way I get it nice and evenly spread without mixing my meat in too much. So as we start with our seasonings, we're going to start with pouring our salt in. Our salt is going to be 1 teaspoon of salt. All the rest of our seasonings are going to be the same. They're going to be 1/2 tablespoon. So 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 tablespoon of pepper, 1/2 tablespoon of garlic powder, 1/2 tablespoon of oregano, and 1/2 tablespoon of basil. Okay, now obviously you can always change these for your taste, but that is what I have found to be a really good mixture. Too much salt will overwhelm you, especially if you're using a seasoned Italian sausage. That is, you don't want it to get too overwhelmingly salty. I like a lot of salt, but I don't want it to totally overwhelm me. Next, I'm gonna put in the breadcrumbs. We are going to do 2/3 of a cup of breadcrumbs. Okay, just mix those in. I like to take my rings off before I start mixing, because we're gonna be doing meat here in a minute. All right, now I'm gonna take my eggs. I have them into a little bowl. I'm gonna beat them just a little bit. I don't wanna overbeat my eggs either, but I want them to be a little bit mixed up so they're easier to incorporate throughout the meat. Okay, now what I'm going to do next is put my meat in. I'm also going to put my ground beef and my Italian sausage in. Okay, and then I am going to pour my egg on top here. I'm not gonna act like there's some magical combination for these, as if like what order you have to do it in, but I just want it to be able to be mixed as little as possible. So here we go, we're gonna mix it all in there and get a really good incorporation going. And these are gonna make a really delicious meatball. Okay, so as you can see, we're done mixing all our meat in together. We are gonna shape these into balls on our cooking sheet, and that will be our next step. Well guys, before we shape our meat into balls here, I'm gonna tell you there are 2 ways that you can cook your meatballs. I'm going to just cook them in my oven at 375. If you were making a sauce and spaghetti dinner tonight, you could cook your meatballs in your sauce as it cooks on the stove. While it's reducing on the stove and getting all thickening up, I have put my meatballs in there. That's my husband's favorite way of eating them, being cooked in the sauce. But these are really good too. So I actually like them the other way. I love them cooked in the oven because I like to eat them when they come out of the oven. So yeah, I just want to say that if you wanted to cook them in your sauce, you could totally do that. Give it about 30 minutes amount of time to probably cook them. Mine have taken faster than that. Not as long as that, but you always want to kind of estimate longer if you're trying to plan your dinner out. So we're going to shape these into balls, and then we're going to line them on our baking sheet and throw them in the oven. Okay, there are a few ways you can go about this. So if you just want to take them with a spoon, your hand, and try and eyeball it and get them around the same size, you can totally do that. If you like things a little more measured, very similar, then you can get a cookie scoop and scoop out your meat. Sometimes I feel like this almost makes it too much of a ball, so it might be good just to give it a little pat on top, or move it so it's not such a tight ball. But yeah, anyways, this is kind of one way you can do it. So we're gonna do this real quick, put this onto our baking sheet. I've used metal baking sheets. I have a stone baking sheet that I love, and sometimes I bake them on there. Anything works. So we're gonna get these done, and we're gonna put them in the oven. Okay guys, so we are going to put these in the oven at 375 for 12 minutes. And we are gonna test them after 12 minutes and see if the temperature is up to 165 degrees. Once it's up to 165 degrees, you're in the safe zone and they are all done. Well guys, our meatballs are out of the oven and they smell, look, and taste so good. The texture is absolutely perfect. The flavor is spot on. If you follow this recipe to a T, you are going to get consistently delicious Italian meatballs. So if you want to take a look at these, man, they look so good. And they just came out. I actually ended up doing the second batch a little bit bigger. So you can see the first ones are a little smaller than the second ones are. Well, it's kind of hard to see, but they're pretty significant difference. One is more like a golf ball, and one is just, the smaller ones were probably a golf ball, and the other ones I decided to make a little bit bigger. So these are awesome. They're great to eat fresh out of the oven, which we are definitely going to be doing a little bit of that, and they are great in sauce. Whether you cook them in sauce or cook them in the oven, they are delicious addition to a pasta meal to give a little bit of meat and protein. My family really enjoys them, and I hope your family will too. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please like the video. Please share it with your friends and your family. And as always, please subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to support us in making these videos and this content for you. Until next time, guys, we'll see you soon.